Welcome to Gender A Wider Lens, exclusive content for our listener community.
In these bonus episodes, we're going to dive even deeper into the issues surrounding gender in today's culture. Some weeks we'll respond to listener Q&As.
And we'll also be introducing a series called Dinner Party Conversations. And here we start grappling with the difficult question, such as how do we talk to people in real life about gender? And we also dive a bit deeper into topics that we touched on in the full episode.
Here is the bonus conversation. So the question is, aside from your work online and on your podcast, how do you talk to people in your real life in 3 dimensions about gender so that we could kind of give our listeners tips? Because a lot of people find it's really hard to talk about this in real life, including us.
Yeah.
So we're asking our guests this question. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think you have to read the room. And you have to it is possible to suss out where people stand on this issue. I think the mistake people make is assuming that everyone is going to agree with what they say or believe what they say. For example, I have a neighbor who I think assumes that because I'm married to a woman, I am probably, a progress flag waving, gender queer, I look a certain way, gender non-conforming, married to a woman, all that stuff. And so a while ago, she started talking to me about how J.K. Rowling is a TERF. I am not the audience, right? I am not the person to have that conversation with. I backed out of the conversation. I didn't want to get into it. This is somebody I share a fence with. I don't want to have bad blood with this person. But I realized something in that moment was that she looked at me and she was stereotyping me, and she just happened to get the stereotype wrong. And so I try to be really cautious about assuming what people believe. Unless somebody is wearing a shirt that says I voted for Joe Biden, I'm not even going to assume that people are in what political party they are. I think that this is just something that I have learned as I've gotten older. You just really cannot assume people's political beliefs. And so there are ways to sort of suss out where people feel, if they are open to having that conversation. And so I would start with that. And then if you are, and I feel a little devious sort of giving people tips on this because I maintain all the time that I'm not an activist, but I think there are certain points where there are certain breaking points when it comes to trans ideology. And the most obvious one, I think, is sports. Mm-hmm. That is where trans activists lose a whole lot of people, less than you would think. Because you can look at polling on this, and a certain shockingly high percentage of Democrats do think that biological males should be permitted in women's sports. I never thought that would be anything more than a very, very fringe position. I think at the last poll that I saw, it was something like 30% of Democrats think that shorts should be segregated by gender, not sex. It's still a minority.
Yeah. And
so I think those are sort of the positions, trans kids, medical, pediatric transition in sports. Those are, I think, the positions where people sort of reveal how they really feel about this issue. There's sort of, it just sounds a little duplicitous, but there are ways to sort of feel people out before you kind of launch into a diatribe about how trans women are men or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think also,
just questions you ask, those are great points, like the sports and the kids, but are there specific ways you might bring it up or throw it into conversation that are kind of neutral-ish, or how do you feel people out with those questions?
I think you can. Okay, so my nephew was visiting me recently. He's 13, and I wanted to get his sort of opinion on this stuff without influencing him, because he doesn't know what I write about. He doesn't know anything about my politics. And I just sort of asked them, hey, are there kids in your school who are non-binary or who go by they, them pronouns? And he told me yes. And I said, what do you think about it? And he just told me. He said the right answer, which is, I think they're silly. So maybe he has been influenced by me or by his parents. But so, I think you can just ask people what they think about it without sort of revealing your own beliefs straight away. This is not a conversation that comes up that often within my personal life because I live in a Navy town. I'm surrounded by like Navy vets and immigrants and not online people at all. And so this just isn't the sort of conversation I have with people unless they bring it up. Yeah, and if they bring it up, it's typically because they know my position and they sort of want like a friendly ear. But yeah, I'm much more likely to, talk about the weather and like the mayor than I am Leah Thomas in sort of my daily life.
So, I mean, like the way this sometimes comes up for me, because I don't have a child in the game or a skin in the game or a child involved in this child in the game. It's like a football dad or something. Anyway, but like, of course, I'll be at a dinner party or something, and then people will bring it up. And then I'll feel this compulsion to say something, but then I often don't know how. Yeah. And I kind of am experimenting with different ways of talking about it. So I used to say right off the bat that I work with young people on issues of gender and sexuality, but I don't think that's helpful. And what I do now is I kind of say I work with young people who have a lot of complicated mental health issues, autism, and we work on like making sure they're taking good care of their bodies and their health. And so that's a very non-giving away way of talking about it. Yeah. But like, I'm sure you've been in situations where people bring it up in maybe like a very pro-affirmation or very pro-transactivism way without a lot of nuance. Do you try to inject little pieces of nuance into it or ask thoughtful questions?
Yeah, I try. So it depends on the situation, right? I have an unfortunate tendency to, I'm kind of a fighter, and that is a really, really good way to kill a dinner party really quickly. And so I have to really watch myself in mixed company. And at this point, like my reputation precedes me. So in general, if somebody like invites me to a dinner party, they know what they're getting. But in mixed company, I try to like keep my mouth shut because I know it's probably not going to be productive. And also, if people are talking about their own children, that can be really difficult to have that conversation. So just like as an example, we had last winter, we had a friend of my wife's come out and visit, a friend of hers from college. She has a very gender nonconforming child, a little girl. She's, I think, in first or second grade. And the teacher, she told us that the teacher asked the child if she wanted to be called he or she or they. And the mom was telling us about this, and I got sort of just like, shaking my head, like, what the, so this is bad. This is bad teaching. This is, and I did sort of, this woman, I had never met her before. She's a friend of my wife's from college. And I did sort of launch into like, well, based on the studies of 30 years of research, and I'm not sure that I'm not sure that it helped at all, because she's talking about her child. I've never met the child. She really likes the teacher. Yeah. She lives in Minneapolis, so she's sort of surrounded by this shit anyway. And I'm just not sure it helped. The same way I try not to be a mansplainer about it. Not to use a gender term.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I find that when I'm feeling insecure, I go into that whole, like, according to the research from X amount, but that's so obnoxious, and I'm sure it doesn't help. Yeah. I'm sure it doesn't help.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've kind of gone slightly the opposite of you, Sasha, because I would have always been a general therapist. So I always said, I worked with, teenagers mostly, sometimes parents and stuff like that. But more and more, this feels a little disingenuous or a little bit dishonest saying that, because actually I'm working in gender so much more.
Yeah.
So now, and I've noticed one thing, which it's unfortunate. We were at a dinner party recently, and Henry, my husband, kept on bringing up trans kids.
He's like kicking them under the table.
I was like, it honestly felt like work. I could see what he was doing. He was trying to get it in, to raise it up as a subject. Yeah. And he was like a shoveling it in. And I was just, and they were just going, what's this guy's? What's his beef with trans? And it felt like, and I'm sure our listeners will identify, it just felt like I have to have the energy for this, and I don't.
Yeah,
totally.
I know.
Totally. Yeah.
I just.
Yeah.
let's go back to politics.
Time and place. Yeah. And there is, I think it's really, especially when when a lot of this is being litigated online, especially through Twitter, it's this toxic platform. I think it's really important to remember that most people just want what's best. And they're coming at this from good faith, from a place of good faith. And they're probably misinformed because the mainstream media has done such a shit job informing people on this subjects. But just trying to remember that,
well, it's like trying to correct somebody's speech or you're literally saying you're misinformed.
Right.
That's a difficult thing to say to somebody.
It's hard.
Which none of us like it when other people do it to us.
And we're fundamentally, we're going on that premise with them.
Yeah. I think something I'm going to keep experimenting with is saying something like, let's say your friend is talking about how people are asking her child if she wants to be a he, him. I might say something like, if we were being totally honest, we were allowed to say whatever we thought, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. That's my next thing. I'm always kind of like trying some random things.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Katie. That was great.
Sure.
Thanks a million. Thank you for being part of our listener community. Your financial support helps to make all of this possible.
For more ways to support the show, please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment on our episodes, and of course, spread the word about joining the paid community and all the exclusive content you can find there.
And for more information, please visit widerlenspod.com.